welcome to How It All Started podcast in North Iowa. My name is Erick Nganyange. My special guest today is Pat Schultz. And our conversation today will be on Pat's life and the book she wrote called Amazing Women of Early Mason City. Pat, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing this book.
It was a great experience.
Was it?
It really was.
How long did it take you to do
It
research?
took me a long time because I did become executive director of Right on the Park. And we had some big events going on, and the restoration was happening, the grand opening was happening. And so I really got bogged down. I didn't intentionally start out wanting to write a book. It all happened when I found out the president of the bank at the time that the building was originally built was a woman. This was, early. I wanted to know more about her. And I found out that it's difficult to find out about women. We have some great county histories with biographical sketches of men, none of women. So I started turning to old newspapers, found out about the woman who was the president of the bank. Then for our grand opening, I think it was probably my idea to do a ladies' tea in the ladies' balcony or parlor, which is just outside where we are at the moment. And I researched other women so I could be like the town gossip talking about the women.
Yeah.
And we had food and drink, and that went over extremely well. So the bulk of the research really didn't come until after I retired as director. 2 years before the publication was the heaviest research time.
When was the book published? 2020?
Yeah.
2020. So the idea came to you when you realized the first bank president was a woman, and you went like, oh, there's something there.
What were other women doing? Yes.
There you go. What was the other women doing? So the newspaper clipping, and it was the library was the only places you had to go?
No, online. I started in the library. Our library has a good history room.
Oh, here at the park.
Yes,
at the park.
And it had the minutes of the women's club way back when, and it had a couple of diaries that were helpful. But online, there is one source called newspapers.com and one called newspaperarchives.com. And for the oldest material, that was one of my best sources. I went also to the University of Iowa. The library there has a special women's section, famous women from Iowa's history.
Okay.
And that was really helpful. And then I also got some material from the Iowa Historical Society in Des Moines. And then I was able to contact some of the descendants of some of the women and get some photos and some information from them as well.
So 2 years of heavy research.
Yes.
To get to this.
Yes.
Why was it so important for you to write this book?
These women deserve it. I mean, nobody knew. And when I do presentations on the book and when people read the book, their reaction is, so why didn't we know any of this?
Now, this is the big thing I did not know about in the book.
Okay.
Mason City was the first town in Iowa to have a flushed toilet?
Yes.
What?
I love it. Yes.
I think I highlight that like 3 times. I'm like, Pat, are you sure?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal. That's a very big deal.
Wow. How did that all come about?
I don't know. I just know
My
that
goodness.
it's there in several sources. It wasn't just one source to verify that. It was several, and I was just amazed.
Yeah.
And, some of the times when I came across other things that they didn't have, like they didn't have refrigerators.
Yeah. Well, let's get to these amazing women. Since you've been a teacher for 32 years, I want to start it off with the teacher. I don't have them in order. I want to start it off with Cora Hicks.
Isn't that amazing? I love the quote from her. despite their hijinks and whatever, you just got to love them. I thought, now there is a teacher.
I mean, 62 years.
I know.
Anybody broke that record yet in the Mason City?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, 62 is crazy.
It is.
Teaching for that long.
Her commitment to education. Mm-hmm. And, she lost her husband.
Yeah.
And she was active in other things. And, when you're approaching 80 as I am, the examples of a lot of these women who did a lot of things when they were in my age group.
Oh, yeah.
Is really encouraging.
They did not slow down.
I mean, you don't have to slow down and sit in your recliner all day. You can do all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah. And I think she lived to be 80-some or maybe 90.
I am not positive. She's near the end of the book. So.
Oh, 91. Yeah. She lived to. Yeah, and that's another thing, too, about this. Amazed me about these women in here.
Yes.
A lot of them, they just lived to be 90.
I know.
With all the hardship they went through, 10 kids. I mean.
Did you happen to notice that some of the wealthiest women who only had a couple of kids died much younger?
They did not live longer.
No, I mean, one died of a heart attack on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
They.
Yeah, because I think was it one died at 42?
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
No,
crazy.
It was actually the wealthier women who died younger.
Yeah.
I guess maybe hard work and dedication gives you a stamina that's
to live longer.
Maybe.
Yeah. Was Lorinda Thomas, was she the first woman to be here in Washington City?
I think that John's wife, the first one.
Okay.
No, maybe Owens was here.
Owens was here because that's Owens' wife.
Might have been first.
Yeah,
either Owen was first or McMillan's were first. I have Lorinda first in the book, so she must have been here first.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Matilda Russell.
Yes.
Her connection with Elizabeth Gardner, with the Spirit-like massacre.
Yes.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yes, and one of the men who was on the bank board and who was instrumental in bringing Wright here.
Yeah.
And he and his partner who owned the hotel and this office part of the building was the attorney for the sister who was kidnapped by the Indians.
Oh, wow.
When she sued the county over there to get her family's property back.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. I have Emily Russell.
And she's the one who had the hotel, right?
Yeah, purchased the hotel, the Charles Hotel.
Yes.
Where's that at? Where was that used to be?
Where we're sitting here. It was kitty corner across to the northwest of us.
Okay.
Right on that corner.
Okay. And this was like, I think, 1857 when she did that.
Yeah, way early.
Yeah. Wow. Mary Church. What's her connection with Frank Lloyd?
Unitarianism. Okay. All right. Mary came here very early. Her brother was already here and was the judge for a time here and the postmaster. And she came here and she started teaching and she saved enough money in order to buy some farmland because her brother recommended that it was a good investment.
Yeah.
Then after the Civil War, she married Thomas Emsley and they had the two daughters and they started a bank together. And he was the president and she was the head cashier. They did well. And eventually they had to build a new bank, which was right across the street.
They did it very well.
Yeah. And that building is the first limestone that was used for a building in Mason City. And, it's more than clothiers now, okay? Huh. And then her husband probably had some form of dementia coming on. He went out to Nevada. He sent a message back, strange message saying he'd been robbed and had no money and they need to wire him money and all of that. And then it was reported that he committed suicide by drowning.
Oh.
so she took over and ran the bank. She was still the president of the bank when they brought Wright to Mason City for the first time.
Yeah.
By the time the hotel was built, she was still on the board, but she was no longer president. But she was so involved with women's suffrage work. There are 4 or 5 women from Mason City whose names are on a plaque in the League of Women Voters national headquarters in Washington, D.C., as some of the 24 women from Iowa who did the most for women's suffrage. And Mary's is one of them.
Wow.
But she ran the bank for a time. And then she married, before she married a second time to Mr. Adams.
Wow.
And she was the one who donated the first money for them to build Memorial University here.
She donated $2,000 back then.
Yes.
Gosh.
Yes.
That's a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I assume that if it wasn't for Mary, maybe we would never know Frank Lloyd in the Mason City?
That's probably true.
True. Okay.
Yes, because
she was instrumental to bring him here.
She was a Unitarian, and her granddaughters, the Markley sisters, went to the Hillside Homeschool in Spring Green on Lloyd family's property. And the 2 women who ran it were Frank Lloyd Wright's maiden aunts. Neither were married, and they ran the school. And he had been working for Lyman and Stillsby, I think, at the time when he helped design and build their school building, their first school building there on that property. And so the Markleys had all been there, to take the girls to school and to visit. And they had met right there, and they had heard more about him, seen his design of the school. So when it came time to hire an architect, they thought of Wright because of that association.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So for the people of Mason City, every time you think about Frank Lloyd Wright, think about Mary Church Adams.
Yes.
Because maybe we would never know anything about Frank Lloyd if it wasn't for her.
Yes.
And she had enough money to bring him out here.
And like I said, she also knew his uncle, who was a minister and a leader in the Unitarian movement at the time.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. Another big name, Mae McNider.
Oh, my goodness.
That's the name most people will know.
That's the name most people will know.
Yeah.
And she was a force to be reckoned with.
Boy.
I'll tell you.
Passion for the library and conservation.
Conservation.
I love the idea of the library. She said, "Yeah, you can build the library, don't cut the trees."
Yes. 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 And they said she would wheel herself in her wheelchair. She lived across the street to the library grounds to weed. And I thought, oh my goodness.
For people, because people might not know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
What do you mean? So if you look, the Mason City Public Library is curved.
Yes.
And I think most libraries are not like that.
No, I don't know of another curved library.
So it's curved like that because when Mae McNider and her son donated the 7-acre land, they say, build the library here. Don't cut the trees. So they had to go around those trees to make sure they don't cut anything. That's why our Mason City Library is the interesting look.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when I read that, I was like, oh, she was about her business. She real care about conservation.
And when she said something, people listened, believe me. And she was so instrumental in, she served on the state Conservation Commission, was instrumental in getting the mounds, the Indian mounds, over on the Mississippi, named as a national park. And she was instrumental in getting the park at Boone and the park at Pilot Knob by Forest City, named as state parks. She was very instrumental in that. And
the McNider Museum also was theirs, or was that their house, and then it got converted to
a convent.
Okay.
It was a convent for a while, and then it became the museum.
So all that land was their land.
Yeah, and the house across the street now from the library and the McNider Museum is now our hospice.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, that was her home.
Wow. So basically, they donated all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and she was instrumental. We have quite a few parks in Mason City. We have the Georgia McNider Park, and we have the, this McNider Park and that.
Was that her land, too?
That was, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Just one person.
Yeah.
Doing all that.
Yeah. No. Well, and she had only one child, and she had time and money and people to work for her. Great-grandson or her great-grandson still lives in Clear Lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So how many parks that has been built in Mason City is because of the land she donated?
I think
Is
three.
it just one, 3?
3 in the library, I think.
Wow.
And then they donated. The next generation lived out east of town in a great big house, and now that is a home for wayward youth, for kids who have had problems.
Okay.
And I don't know if the McNiders also donated that or not. I suspect they did.
They did, yeah.
But not her generation.
Wow. Another big name was Gertrude Dacre.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gertrude.
Talk
Her
to
work
me.
with the Y.
Why, yeah, the breakfast.
Particularly.
Bed and breakfast over here.
And that's her brother built that house. She never married, and she devoted a lot of her life working on behalf of young women through the YWCA.
Of course, she's one of the founders
Yes.
of the WY. Yeah.
Yes, of the one here. I try to imagine her brother getting haunted by her because she left all of her money to the Methodist Church, to the Y, and to a Southern Black college. The Iowa law at that time was such that a certain portion had to go to any existing family members. And her brother took it to court on behalf of her mother, who would be her closest living relative, for that money to go to her mother instead of to these charities that she wanted it to go to. And he won, because
really?
that's what the Iowa law said. And I imagine she would have been livid,
Oh, yeah.
really, really mad about that.
Yeah. A lot of people in Mason City would know what Stebbins Theater is. But I don't know if a lot of people know anything about Betha Stebbins.
I doubt it. I really doubt it.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit, because I did not know.
She was particularly interesting to me because, Mason City's here, and if you drive out past Nyack and take the Plymouth Blacktop and turn and go into the little town of Rock Falls, the building is still there that her father was one of the founders of the bank. The money started building up from him. Yeah. But if you go from where that bank is 2.5 miles east, that's where I live.
Okay.
On an acreage out there in the middle of nowhere.
Why the Stebbins is in Mason City? Why is not out there where she was living?
She lived here in town.
Okay.
Yeah. When she wasn't teaching someplace else, she lived here in town.
Okay.
And the bank had a branch in Mason City, and the one there in Rock Falls closed before the one in Mason City. And Rock Falls, I don't know if we have 300 people in Rock Falls.
Oh, yeah.
It's a really tiny place.
That's true. So it would make more sense to have.
And so it makes more sense because it could do more good with more people here.
Cannon.
Oh, that's the club my mom belonged to.
Oh, yeah? Because I know about the house.
Do you? Have you seen it?
I seen it, and it's amazing. It's still standing.
Isn't it?
Oh,
it's falling apart.
It's falling apart, but
I wish they would.
At least we can drive there and see
it. Yes.
So this is how it looked like in 1866.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes. And you can go to the library and read her journal and her daughter's journal about their trip coming to Iowa. And she was so disabled, after
really?
they got to Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was an invalid for most of the rest of her life.
Because that was one of the first houses that was built in Mason City?
in the county.
In the county.
It was the first stone house.
Stone
built.
house. And that's
There were others that were built, but hers, that was the first stone house
and
that
it's
was
the only
built.
one that's still standing.
Yes, yes.
Oh my goodness. What do we know about her?
Well, she was quite religious. You know, she tells the story of growing up in New York and, you know, making their own, not only making their own clothes, but making their own cloth. And you know, the rigors of growing up in New York in those really early years. You know, once she was here, she started the group, the club that she started, as kind of sharing the Bible, but they also would bring their sewing and they would read books.
So she was from New York.
Yes.
What brought her to Mason City?
Oh, well, her husband decided that he wanted to farm here. You know, it was in that time period when Iowa was being promoted, and they had pretty much eliminated the indigenous population of the state by then. The land here is extremely fertile, and it attracted farmers primarily. That's why he came, was for a better farming opportunity, and brought his family with him.
One of my favorite stories in the book is the two sisters, the nurses, the story.
Sisters.
Now, this was the hospital before the Mercy Hospital.
Yes, before the Park Hospital.
Before the Park Hospital before the Mercy, because Mercy was what, 1915?
Yeah, well, it came after the Park.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about these sisters.
They had a hard life growing up as children. The father died in the Civil War. They were kind of living with the grandparents, and the brothers decided that they wanted to come to Iowa to try farming. The sisters came with them to be their housekeeper.
The two sisters, Sophia and Dolly, they went to Chicago. They got their nursing.
Yep.
I don't know if they had license back then or not. They did. So they became nurse, and then they came back here. They opened a hospital
in their home.
In their home.
Yes.
And they were able to house 10 to 15 people at one time?
Yes.
There was no hospital in Mason City.
No, nothing.
At the end of that story, I don't know if you found out about this information. You say you did not know how many children were delivered.
No.
You still don't know that?
No, don't know.
That would be interesting information.
It wouldn't it? Yes.
And they ran this thing for how many years?
Oh, I
like
don't know.
15, 20?
At least. Sophia died younger, and Dolly kept running it for some time after
But it was
Sophia.
too much for her.
Yeah. And to think, you know, they nursed through a polio epidemic, through other epidemics. They were, amazing women to be able to do that. One of the women I wanted to write about was Madeline Walls. She was the librarian at the Mason City Library.
Was she the first black librarian there?
Yeah.
Was she? Okay.
Was she the first, or was her sister? No, she was before her sister.
Yeah.
But at any rate, even when I was in college at UNI, I would come home during Christmas break and do research at the Mason City Library. Because in those days, the semester didn't end before Christmas. It didn't end until a couple weeks after we were back. And you probably had papers due when you got back. Mm-hmm. So you spent vacation working on this stuff. And I just was awed by Madeline. And I will be very honest, maybe it was partly because she was black and I had no experience with anyone who was. Mm-hmm. And so maybe I was kind of fascinated by that. And so I looked up Madeline and read her obituary, and then I discovered her mother and her sister. Yeah. And Esther Walls is maybe my very favorite woman in that book. As you know, you've read it, she went on to be the head librarian of the New York City Public Libraries.
Some of the pictures in there, she met some Chinua Achebe and all those big shot names.
Yes.
And I was like, wow.
Yeah, that picture with Chinua Achebe and Baldwin, and there's a couple of others.
A couple other people. I was like,
Yeah,
she's a big deal.
And then the work she did for the United Nations and her travels to Africa and, all over promoting literacy.
Yeah.
And all of her materials are in the women's archives at the University of Iowa because
really?
she was a University of Iowa grad. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you remember from the book, she was one of the first Black women to be allowed to live in the dorms. At the university.
At the university, yeah.
And if you're interested in her, if you go to those archives online through the university, they have an interesting YouTube, fairly long presentation about her that I just discovered a couple days ago. I loved this story that Madeline told about when she and her mother had gone to visit Esther in New York City.
New York, yeah.
And they went to the Music Man production.
Yeah, I remember that story.
And they, the mother was a little faint or something, and they got an usher to help. And the usher found out they were from Mason City, Iowa, and he took them down to better seats, which they loved. But Madeline said, I didn't dare tell him I was the librarian in Mason City, or he would have thought we were fakes for sure.
Yeah. These women in 19th century,
yes,
they had so many kids.
Yes.
And they lost a lot of kids.
Yes.
In the process. Also, they started a lot of clubs.
Oh, did they ever?
It was that for them to get together and kind of, I don't know, talk about these things.
Their clubs were serious. If you look at what they did, they studied literature. They talked about politics. They studied art.
Was that more to get away from the pain of losing kids and all that stuff?
Well, it was for Julia Dakin.
Okay.
Remember, if you will, that she knew Frank Lloyd Wright's uncle, Lincoln Lloyd. He was a minister, Unitarian minister. And after the loss, she and her sister were Unitarians. She had gone to a Unitarian meeting, and she had talked with him. And he told her, go home and gather your friends around you and talk and learn together, and it will help. And that's what she did. That's how that club began. Yeah. There was a women's club in Mason City very early, and they started out with projects to change the city, to get sidewalks, to get a woman police officer, to clean up the town. A lot of them were against alcohol. They were temperance members. They worked with their churches, but they were big into groups, which is strange to me because I am not a big group joiner.
And I was about to ask that because we don't have that many groups anymore.
No.
Like women groups.
Well, I have talked to PEO groups.
Yeah.
We have a women's club now in Mason City, but it's primarily just a social club.
What changed from their
More
generation?
women went to work full time. That's
didn't
a big.
Think about that.
That's
I didn't think about
big,
that. You're right.
Big change.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, when you get to World War II, and women are out there replacing men in jobs, and women are flying airplanes, and women are, overseas nursing, and women's lives changed dramatically. Yeah. And then, of course, another major change was birth control in women's lives.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Now they're not having 10 kids, 11 kids anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Some things that impacted your life.
Yes.
Vietnam War.
Oh, my. Yes.
How much did that impact your life?
It changed us. It changed the whole United States. We have not honestly been the same since, partly because it coincided with so many things that happened at that time. We had the protests against the war. We had some big civil rights protests going on at that time. We had assassinations at that time. And it was as though, everything, every day was absolutely horrendous. Two events, one that directly affected me. I was pregnant. The obstetrician that I had was in the Air Force National Guard, and he was called to active duty.
Oh.
Suddenly he's gone and I have to find a new doctor.
Yeah.
But the event that really shook me was the killing of students at Kent State. That was so unnecessary and so heartbreaking. The other thing that happened later, my husband was not drafted because he wanted really to be a pilot, but his eyesight was too bad. So he ended up being mad about that and got exemption based on that lousy eyesight. But his college roommate was in the Air Force, and they served in Vietnam, and he committed suicide sometime after he got back. Another teacher and I taught a course called American Heritage. I taught the American literature part, and she taught the American history part. And every other summer, we took a group of kids to Washington, D.C. And the first time we went, I walked from the Lincoln Memorial to the wall, the Vietnam Memorial Wall. It just hit me in the stomach so hard. And I'm standing there for a while and can't move. And we have 20-some kids with us. And the last thing I want to do is break down in front of kids.
20 kids, yeah.
But the tears did come.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me of that whole era. And it reminded me of how many gave their lives for a lost cause.
Yeah.
That war was so wrong. I had wanted to be a journalist. I went to junior college here for 2 years and had thought I was going to go to Missouri to Columbia for the journalism program. I fell in love and ended up getting married after 2 years here. And my husband wanted to teach and wanted to go to UNI. And they didn't have a journalism program. So I ended up with a major in English, education, a minor in speech and drama, and a minor in journalism. Went on to teach. I always felt, this is just ridiculous, but I always felt this sense of guilt, honestly felt a sense of guilt.
From not becoming a journalist?
That I didn't become a journalist and I wasn't part of covering what really was happening over there.
Yeah.
That's a strange thing to say, but I have felt that all my life.
The other thing that impacted your life was the civil rights movement, right in that same era.
Yes.
Talk to me.
Oh. The things that have happened in this country to minority groups, Black people in particular, but almost every minority group who has ever been here. And to remember the killings of, Malcolm X, King. The other thing that broke my heart was when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, because I had such high hopes that he would make a real difference in the civil rights.
Yeah. Another thing impacted your life.
Yes.
The Holocaust Museum.
Yes.
Talk to me.
Oh, there is this marble model of Auschwitz, and it is of the gas chamber. And it has the people walking in, and then it has the carving of the people as they are dying in the gas chamber. Yeah. And then you walk through a boxcar that was used to transport people to the camps. And it's just the eeriest, most ghostly feeling.
Yeah. How, when the people design all this stuff, they design it for that purpose. We're designing this to kill so many people.
Yes.
Where is the evil coming from in us?
I wish that I knew. I look at people like Jeffrey Dahmer. Let's take an example like that. Or these young men who have killed 20 or more people in a school, children in a school. The fact that there is that kind of evil within the human being is beyond my understanding.
Yeah. C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yes, that's one of my favorite.
What's your favorite book?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. How many times have you read that one?
Oh, probably 6 or 7.
Okay. How much did that impact your life?
the central character, Aslan the lion, and the influence that he has on people. Of course, he's been compared to Christ. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me whether you make that comparison or not. It's just the example that he gave on how to live and what to care about. I'm also a hard and fast fan of Star Trek: The Second Generation.
Okay.
And again, to imagine a world like that, where on that starship there were people of different races, from different planets, all working together and trying to, to make peace with everything that might be out there. The wisdom that came through those writers and those actors really had a big influence on me.
Heart disease? So
Yes.
you enduring heart disease for
A long
period of time?
Yeah, I had the first procedure when I was in my late 40s. I had a blocked artery. And at that time, they didn't have stents yet. They just put a balloon in and poofed up the balloon to blow the blockage into the walls of the artery. So that was number one. And then later, number two was a single one. The third one, this is another terrible story. I was having chest pains and went in to the ER. And they did an angiogram. And I woke up to one of our most noted doctors here in Mason City saying, you need open heart surgery. And I was still dopey from the anesthetic. And I said, no, I won't have open heart surgery. You can do stents, but you can't do open heart surgery. And he said, well, why not? And I said, because I'm going to Mexico in 2 weeks.
I got my priorities straight.
And he said, that's not good enough. And I said, I don't care. You can't do open heart surgery. So they did go ahead and try stents.
Yeah.
And they ended up putting in 3 in a row in the major artery.
Yeah.
And when I woke up this time, I got a high five from the doctor saying, well, I guess you're going to Mexico.
We can do that after 2 weeks. Yeah, what do you want to tell people about the books other than come over here and pick it up?
Well, it's available, and there aren't a whole lot left. They are available here in the Right in the Park gift shop.
Yeah.
Or you can order them online from Right on the Park's website.
Okay.
That all of the profit from it goes to Right on the Park, and so it was all donated to Right on the Park, and that helps keep this building going. It does double duty that way. But what I want to tell people about the book is, women have not received the credit they deserve for what has happened in the development of this country. And, we read about John Adams, but Abigail Adams was an incredible woman, too. But we need to tell these stories about people that are lesser known.
Yep. I want to close with this question here, the last question.
Okay.
If you could go back in time and sit down with either one of these women in this book, which one it will be, and what would you ask them?
It would be Esther.
I figured that's where you're going.
I just admire her so much, and I'd like to know more about her experience growing up in Mason City, about her experience at the University of Iowa, and I wonder what life was really like there for her.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, you are most welcome. I've
Very much
enjoyed
so.
it.
I appreciate it. I'm glad you did enjoy. I enjoy so much. I enjoy reading the book. Thank you for the work.